territories. The report shows we need to do better to make housing and housing support fair and accessible for those who need it most. This is not just another report, this is a call to action, and we're answering it. We are going to make changes and do things differently. The Auditor General found that Housing NWT needs to improve how we monitor housing allocations, maintain our units, and support home ownership programs. We've accepted all recommendations from the Auditor General and are taking concrete steps to strengthen oversight, improve housing conditions, and support home ownership. In 2021, Housing NWT began by making foundational changes through its renewal strategy. We've already completed 31 of the 42 in our renewal strategy, including removing barriers to housing programs and improving housing maintenance. But we know there's more work to do. I intend to continue to deliver real change for the residents of the Northwest Territories, and here is what you can expect from us. We're strengthening oversight through updated policies, improved tracking systems, and more training for staff to ensure fair and consistent housing allocations. We're reviewing the structure of local housing organizations to strengthen governance and explore best practices from across Canada. Our programs will undergo more frequent reviews and evaluations to make sure they meet residents' needs. We're exploring new innovative approaches to home ownership programs. We're improving maintenance tracking through better systems to monitor and manage housing repairs so our units stay safe and livable. We're also strengthening oversight through our modernized community housing services agreement with local housing organizations that will formalize maintenance reporting and set clear performance measures. We will complete unit condition verifications, pilot third-party assessments, and expand unit condition reviews to ensure consistent and timely maintenance across the territory. Finally, we're building stronger partnerships with the federal government to help address the complex housing challenges facing the North. The NWT is also making major investments in housing. We are building 152 new public housing units over the life of the Assembly, a $120 million investment. We are also investing $30 million to repair more than 500 existing units. While these incremental territorial investments will surely make a difference, we recognize that the NWT and Housing NWT cannot tackle this crisis alone. We need long-term sustainable federal funding to make a lasting difference for the housing in the Northwest Territories. We will continue to work closely with our federal partners towards this goal. Recent housing audits by the Auditor General across the North have highlighted similar challenges in the Yukon and in Nunavut, which points to issues of chronic underfunding and aging social housing infrastructure across Canada's North. Every dollar we invest creates real opportunities for Northerners to thrive in healthy, secure homes. We are also changing how we think about housing. We're moving from a term, public housing, to social housing, to reflect a people-first approach. I have seen the state of housing in communities across the Northwest Territories and fully acknowledge the need for change in how we operate, maintain, and fund social housing in the Northwest Territories. Housing is about ensuring the health, safety, and well-being of Northern residents. That's what guides me, and that's what will guide our work moving forward. Koyanaini.
I will now welcome questions from the media. I believe we have CKLB already and waiting.
I can't hear you. Noise in my head. Minister, you just said you're stable federal fund and how about the feds have any the money they're giving you is based on the findings of the that's a very damning it's gone on for years and years. You've just been elected, but here have been, this reports, it comes down to not doing their jobs, correct? So the question would be, government have faith that it will be followed through with.
Housing Northwest Territories and the government Northwest Territories is going to follow through.
This based on 2008, based on 2012, nothing new.
Yeah. There's been repeated reports over the last number of years that have focused on some of the recommendations going forward with Housing Northwest Territories. But again, like the federal government has a responsibility to deliver social housing in the Northwest Territories. We do what we can as a government Northwest Territories, but there is obligations by the federal government to provide social housing in the Northwest Territories. They dialed back in the late 90s in delivering any type of housing infrastructure in the north, and it's been up to the Housing Northwest Territories to deliver. And this is something that is very difficult for Housing Northwest Territories to deliver on, considering we have 33 communities, and I mean, we're going from Sax Harbor to Fort Smith. It's a big territory to deliver, and we have 5 districts, and we have like 2,400 social or public housing units to deliver on. So I realize it's a big job, and again, these recommendations are very troubling, but the work we're doing moving forward, that's what we're focused on, how we deliver on the work we're moving forward. I think we need to be progressive, we need to be proactive, we need to work with Indigenous governments and NGOs to deliver on something that is so difficult to deliver on here in the north. I mean, you look at the Auditor General report, the MLAs have just provided their housing as a human right report with 44 recommendations. Housing encompasses all across the north, and we see it in every community, and especially in my riding and the other ridings I've visited, I see the need for this.
So you're going to do better.
We have to do better.
Ollie Williams, Cabin Radio. Can I ask you, Minister, where does Housing NWT think it will get the capacity from to actually deliver on the upgrades, the changes that you just talked about? Because the sense I get is that Housing NWT hasn't necessarily had the capacity to do what it wanted to do previously. You're talking about changes here that feel as though they're going to need extra resources and potentially extra money. Well, how much extra do you need? Where's it going to come from to make a meaningful difference to the quality of service that's been delivered so far?
I think the infrastructure deficit is something that we need to focus on, and the president of Housing Northwest Territories and the vice president of infrastructure and finance have kind of provided me and this government a realization that we need like $63 million over the next 20 years to catch up to our infrastructure deficit on top of what we need in terms of replacing over 1,000 units over the next number of years. So housing's behind the 8 ball. We have a lot to catch up on. And in terms of capacity, I would ask if perhaps Aaron, our president here, Dr. Kelly, could provide some insight to how we do that. Thank you, Ollie. Go ahead, Aaron.
Thank you, Minister. So you'll see in the OAG report that there is a response from Housing NWT, and in there we've identified what needs to be done. And part of this work is looking at the capacity that we already have and redirecting some of it into these needs. Some of it is looking for additional capacity, both from the GNWT and the federal government. And I think the most important part is that People have been primed for change at Housing NWT with the renewal, and we know that we have more work to do. And there's lots of folks that are working actively to try to address these issues, but we have more work to do, and we'll redirect our internal capacity and try to get some more as well, working in partnership, obviously, with LHOs, Indigenous governments, and others. Thank you.
As a follow-up to that, potentially to the President or to the Minister, it sounds as though some of that capacity that you need to actually affect change doesn't exist yet, and you just hope it will arrive. When you talk about redirecting capacity, from where? What, for example, will you direct capacity away from to target this?
You'll notice that there's a lot of review work, and we've hired a program review specialist. And part of that is to make sure that we're being as effective and efficient with our delivery and looking at some of our programs to see if it's the best way. The minister mentioned looking across the country at ways that others are doing this work, and also working through the NWT Housing Forum with Indigenous governments on ideas for how we can do this work better. So I think that really what we're looking for is working together to identify where those capacity challenges can be addressed. And we have initial capacity that I mentioned through program evaluation specialists and some other work that we're doing, and kind of banking on that to move forward to make sure that we're building in efficiencies that may not be there right now. Thank you.
Hi, Sarah Smith, CBC. I'm wondering, in the report, Housing NWT pins down the 2023 wildfires as one of the reasons why some services were affected. What's going to be done to make sure that future heavy wildfire seasons or those anomalies don't impact as much the service that's offered to people in public housing or on the wait list?
Thank you. I'll ask Dr. Kelly if she could provide some information, as it's an operational type question. Thank you.
Thank you. We've done quite a bit of work on this one. I will say that 2023 was an unprecedented wildfire season, and it resulted in a number of evacuations, as you're all aware. And some of the people that were evacuated were those that do repairs and do some of this monitoring work. So we've certainly looked at that. I'm hopeful that we won't have another season that's at the scale of 2023, but it taught us lessons, and we're working to address it. Another way that we're working to be more efficient is through handheld monitoring of unit condition ratings and other kind of technological responses that can help us to be faster at getting some of this work together and collating it so that we can use it for decision making. Thank you.
Just when you say you're working on it, can you give me like one or two concrete examples of things that are in the works to improve that?
Sure. We have work right now on adding some additional capacity for repairs. We just finished having a workshop with all of the LHO technical folks and those from the districts on a new way that we're going to do monitoring and management of data so that we can get input more easily. And then those handhelds I mentioned, instead of having to write down and then transfer by typing in data, we have some automation that's happening that should help us to be more effective. And then you're not evacuating and having data sitting there that you can't input. Thank you.
Any further questions?
I will just ask one, Minister. The organizational structure of Housing NWT, so when you get down to the local housing, there are associations, authorities, the LHOs. To what extent does that provide barriers to some of the things that were talked about here? Like to what extent might there be, when you say we're going to do things differently, will you look at the organizational structure at all? Or are you confident that the way that housing in the NWT is sort of regionalized and then delegated out to organizations at the frontline level, are you confident that that in its essence works well?
Well, I think considering the vast distance in the Northwest Territories, we do need to have regional structures like district offices and local housing organizations. That's probably what works well. It's just the follow up and the monitoring. That's what we need to consistently do. And this OAG report has indicated we haven't done that. So we have to make sure at headquarters and the district offices is that we're monitoring the local housing organizations. We provide them like a community housing services agreement, and we need to make sure that is done consistently. And Dr. Kelly talked about different systems in place that we need to institute as Housing Northwest Territories. It's important that we're, again, consistent, and that we're monitoring, that we're following up, and that we're actually monitoring our own performance rather than having the OAG come back every couple of years and saying we're doing a bad job. We need to do it ourselves, and we need to look at it, and it comes from the top, and all the LHOs need to be on the same page, and that takes capacity, that takes development, that takes communication, and that takes everybody working at the same level, believing in the work that they do and having a passion for it to improve housing in the Northwest Territories. So if we're not at the same level, people are not working together. So we need everybody working together to believe in advancing this moving forward.
You're an MLA for small communities at the same time as being a member of cabinet. We've heard you in the past week in the legislature advocating for communities like Tuktoyaktuk and essentially pushing back at the GNWT in some respects, even though you are a member of cabinet. To what extent are you confident as both a member of cabinet and an MLA for multiple small communities that the cabinet understands the gravity of what we're talking about here and the resources required to actually meaningfully change the experience of housing for people in small communities in the NWT?
Well, I'm confident with our cabinet. I'm confident with our premier, and that's why he selected me as Minister of Housing. Going on the ground, going into people's homes, like I did an Inukput tour recently. I had Dr. Kelly here go with me to all people's homes who wanted a visit into their homes to look at the conditions. We did the same thing in the Sawtoo. We're planning visits in the Hyundai. We've gone to Betchico. We've gone to Providence. We've went into Enterprise. Like, we've gone throughout the north. I think I've visited 21 communities so far, and I still have like 12 more to go. And I think it's just the work. I think both leadership at the leadership level, that they're strong advocates for it. They know having housing at the community level, a strong housing organization and infrastructure at the community level lends to everything across the board that GNWT does, from health to education to infrastructure to social supports. Because like I've told everybody, if you don't have a home, then how can you function? And this goes to every community. We need to have good homes for people to flourish in. And if we don't have that at the community level, then our territory is going to fail. And I believe our cabinet and our premier is aligned with this message. And that's, I mean, the $150 million over the next 3 years is a result of that type of advocacy and that belief. And if we didn't have that, that wouldn't happen. We're good, Ashley, or we're still going?
We just have a mic there, but if you. Oh, did you want me to go to the? Is there? Yeah, there's a. Sorry.
I didn't see that. Okay. So I'm Lisa. I'm with My North now, and I wanted to ask about rent control. I recently moved to Yellowknife, and I've spoken to a number of individuals and families who've seen their rent increase by hundreds of dollars a year, and they're really struggling. Some of them are just making minimum wage, and I'm just wondering, is there a plan to kind of implement rent control at some point?
Maybe Dr. Kelly could provide some information to that. I know with the market housing, it was a recent rental increase, but market housing hadn't increased since, I believe, 2012. Public housing hasn't increased. We're still doing rental rental assessment to see if that is going to increase. We're looking at our core need income threshold. And this is basically like affordable housing. It's social housing. It's low income housing. So we're trying to focus on the greatest need possible in terms of rental control. Perhaps Dr. Kelly can talk about a bit about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. So Housing NWT has public housing units and market units, and there are specific rents for those units. I think you're, if I'm inferring from your conversation, your question, pardon me, you're looking at other units and other providers. And so I think that that question isn't specific to Housing NWT, but I'm happy to get more information from you and try to answer your question better. It's just we don't control the rent of private renters.
That would be the rental.
That would be a different organization. Thanks.
There's no way that you can somehow advocate through the housing and
NWT and we can connect you with the right folks, but Housing NWT manages the rent on our assets, which are public housing and market housing units, and our rent is specific and based on income. So it's a bit different than I think what you're asking about, which is rent control for private entities, right?
I just mean, is there like, I know other provinces and territories do have rental control, and I'm just wondering, I mean, are you speaking with other representatives within, the territorial government to, implement that? Because there are people who have maybe for whatever reason have not been able to get into affordable housing and who are in, the private market in Yellowknife and other parts of the NWT. So that kind of rental control implemented like broadly would help them quite a bit, I think, right?
I can certainly bring that forward. And I will say we have programs that help folks who aren't able to pay those rents. And I think that I'm happy to chat with you about it and make sure that what I'm advocating for is what you're asking, but we're happy to bring that forward. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Minister and President, and everyone for attending today. I believe that concludes our response to the audit findings.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.